Tell me when we're recording. Okay. Please stand and cover yourselves for the reading of our scriptures. Those of you who don't know, I'm tethered. I can't stand. It's not a law, by the way. It's a tradition. But I really like the tradition. It's something that Yeshua and all of his Talmudim, all of his disciples did. We've got to get rid of the phones. Anyway, let's move on. Our scripture today comes from Yov. It's chapter 1, verse 21. Be'ivrit. Vayomer arom yatzati mi beten imi va'arom ashuv shama Yahveh natan vayave lakach yehi shem Yahveh mevel rach. All right, so maybe seated and all of that. Glam Squad. Is my hair all right? Oh, good God. Have you ever wondered if God was going to take everything away from you like he did with Yov? Have you ever wondered why God took everything from Yov? Yov 1:1 says that Yov was perfect. I'm talking about Job, in case you don't know. His name was actually Yov, not Job. But in chapter 1, verse 1, it actually says that Yov was perfect. In Yov 1:8, chapter 1, verse 8, God said that Yov was a perfect and upright man, one that fears God and hates evil. So why do some people say there was sin in Yov? Why would they say there was sin in this man who God himself called perfect? Don't they know that God called him perfect? Well, maybe not. Is fear actually sin? I mean, that's what they're saying, because he said that which I feared came upon me. So they're saying, see, that was his sin. He had fear. So is fear really a sin? And if so, is this sin punishable by the loss of our children and our substance? Why was it okay for Job to be rich at the beginning of the story, and then it became wrong very early on, and then eventually it became okay again? Because not only, he was rich in the beginning, it was taken away, and then he's twice as rich at the end. I mean, why was it okay, then not okay, then okay? Well, you can make up all kinds of stuff, but what does the Bible say about it? The name of today's message is, Blessed be the authority of Yahveh. The literal translation of Yov 1:21 goes this way. And he said, naked came out I from womb mother me, and naked shall I return there. Yahveh has given, and Yahveh has taken. He be authority, Yahveh, to be blessed. Yahveh's authority is to be blessed. We begin this verse, we're going to look at all of the Hebrew words. The first one is Vayomer. Literally, that's and he said. It's from Amar, because the Va is and, Yeh sound, the Yo sound is he, and then all you're left with after that is Amar. Va, Yeh, take that off, and then you have Amar, the root. That is to say, the primary signification is to bear forth, hence to bring to light, to say in oneself, to think. So you don't have to say it out loud, you can think it. To suppose, to command, it's used that way, but basically it's this. It's to shed light on the subject. That's what this word means. And he shed light on the subject, and he said. Our next word is arom, which is naked. Naked, ragged, badly clad, used of one who having taken off his mantle goes only clad in his tunic. See, I mean, he has cover, he's got his underwear on, if you will, and he's still called naked. It's from the root aram, which is to make naked, to uncover, to be disrespectful, spiteful, manifesting one's malicious mind. That's what the word is from. So it would be the taking away for bad reasons, if you will. Our next word is yazati, which is literally came out I, or we would say I came out, because in English we say everything backwards. It should be came out I. You realize it's that way in, I think, every other language but English? So anyway, it's to go out, to go forth, to germinate. It's funny, in Hebrew, if you come out of some place, you go out of that place. You went out of that place. If you go to the store, when you get there, you went to the store is what we think of. You've arrived at the store. But we would say, I am going to the store, and they would say, I come to the store. Because that's what you have to do. You have to come to the store if you're going to go to the store. So this is another word that has that same feel to it. To go out, to go forth, to germinate, to expand as a plant. They use in the sense of going out when speaking of men and other things, especially to go out, to go forth. It's used of soldiers in war. They go forth to war. They go forth to battle. And similarly, shepherds against wild beasts. They go out against, the beasts are out there. They go out to kill them. So it's like going out to war. So it's similar. All right, so our next word is mivaten. It's from the womb. So he went out from the womb. We would think he came out of the womb, but for him, he went out of the womb. Maybe that helped you see what I'm talking about. The womb, of course, is the belly. It's so called from being hollow and empty, though. That's why it's called the womb, because it's hollow and empty. The inside, inmost part of anything, used of the lowest part of Hades, which you would think of as hell. A swelling of a column, like a belly. It's an architectural term, I suppose. It's from an unused root. In other words, the root form of this word was never used in the biblical text. That's what Josephus means when he says it's from an unused root. And to find an unused root in the Josephus, you have to look between certain numbers. You'll have to look between 989 and 990. If you look between those numbers, you'll find this unused root. And the root is batan. It's primarily to be empty, hollow, vain. Should give you a little different idea of why they would call it the womb. Our next word is imi. It's mother me, literally, my mother, as we would say it. And it's the mother that you would think of. So I went out of the womb with my mother. There's really nothing there to grab a hold of that I can think of. Then it says, and naked, ba'arom, and we've already had this word, and naked, as pulled off the clad and all that. And literally in this case, he had no clothes on, right? So naked he came out. But now he's saying, and naked, ashu, shall return. I shall return, because they add the olive to the front of the word, so it's I will return. I will return, to go back to, metaphorically, to be converted. See, that's something that's lost in the Western world. They think of when you convert, when they say that they've repented or they've converted. In the Western world, we think, oh, we left Judaism and we became Christian, but that's not true. If you're not living according to the Torah, you have to convert. You have to go back to living according to the Torah. You have to return. Repentance is a return to Torah observance. It is not a leaving off of Torah and going to Christianity. That's a horrible thing that happened in Christianity. But they had to, they had to make themselves important and the Jews unimportant. So that's what they did with it. But anyway, here you have the word shu. I'm going to return to, going to convert to, if you will, the womb. Followed by any verb to return and to do something again, to repeat something. When it says that it's, a grammar rule is when it's followed by a me, by the word me, which in this case it is, it's to cease from, to leave off anything, and to turn from an evil way. So there you get more of the idea of turning from the evil way is the not living by Torah, and going back to the thing that's good. I'm going to move on to the next word is shama. That sounds like here, right? But this is spelled differently, and it's the word there. I will return there. Now, he said he's left his mother's womb, and now he's saying, I'm going to return there. He's going to go back to his mother's womb, is literally what he said. Now, does that remind you of something? Yeshua said that you had to be born again, and what did they call him Nicodemus in English? What was his name? Probably Nicanor. It's actually used more for women, but there were guys named Nicanor. Anyway, the guy says, what? Will I go back to my mother's womb and come out again? Well, it shouldn't have been a wild-haired thing for him because here it is in Yov. Sounds like the man didn't read his book. Anyway, using this verse, there is spoken of the womb, not of his mother. So he's not going to return to the womb of his mother. That's not even possible. But he's going to return to the womb of the earth. It's idiomatic. I came out of the womb naked. I'm going to go back into the womb of the earth the way I came out, naked. Is that true? Did they bury him with no clothes on? No. Again, it's idiomatic. He came out with nothing. He's going to return with nothing. You can't take it with you. That's the idiom. Or you could say cradle to grave. I came out of the womb, I'm going back to the womb, cradle to grave. You get it? So our translation so far is, and with these words he brought things to light. Naked I came out of my mother's womb, and naked I will return to the womb of the earth. What was Job's point? I came here with nothing. I will leave here with nothing. The loss of the animals and servants won't change that, right? Not losing animals, servants, and things won't change things either. I mean, having it, not having it, none of that's going to change the fact that when he goes back into the earth, he's taking nothing with him. But let's talk about that which Job lost. Well, he lost 7 sons, 3 daughters. He lost 7,000 sheep. Can you imagine having to tend to 7,000 sheep? Can you imagine, picture this. How many people would it take to tend to 7,000 sheep? Don't know. 1, 2, 20? I don't know. But it seems like to me it'd be a lot. So you got to have the people who can tend to them. That means you got to feed them, clothe them, house them. Then you got to have lots of land for them to eat. Because they got to eat, right? And you got to have lots of water for them to drink. So that's just for 7,000 of the sheep. Then he had 3,000 camels. Think about all the food that you're going to have to provide for camels. Think about all the farming it's going to take, all the hay that'll have to be raised, right? They had 500 oxen. You got the same issue. Think about what it's going to take to feed all of these animals, to have enough. You're going to have enough land for all of these animals to be able to eat. And then he had 500 female donkeys. So think of all the land, all the crops, all the people, all that it would have taken for him just to maintain what he had. And then it says, literally it says, and servants great many. It's idiomatic, obviously. Or put another way, one very great household. That's what they really are saying by and servants great many. It's one very great household. It's abudah, the Hebrew word, household, family, servants. It's from the root avad, which is to labor, to work, to till fields, to work vineyards and gardens. So you get what's going on here. He had a great house. Obviously his house was big, but to have a great house means you had lots of land, lots of animals, lots of servants, right? I hope you follow that. So Job 1:5 says, and it was so, when the days of their feasting, speaking about Job's children, and the days of their feasting were gone about, that Job went out to sanctify them. Job went out to sanctify them. He went out to he rose up early in the morning. Remember somewhere else where Moshe rose up early in the morning? He rose up early in the morning and he did the same thing Moshe did. He offered burnt offerings according to the number of all his children. For Job thought to himself, it may be that my children have committed Torah rebellion. They may have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. Thus did Job continually. Continually. Every morning he got up and he made those sin sacrifices for his children because he wasn't sure that his children weren't getting a little too drunk and saying things and doing things they shouldn't do. So he was keeping them covered by the blood. Here's something to contemplate. This verse just said that Torah rebellion, that sin, is the equivalent of cursing God in our hearts. Yeah, it did. He thought to himself, for Job thought to himself, it may be that my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. So to commit sin is to curse God in your heart. You get it? You see it? Have I ever told you guys what sin is? Well, if not, let me point out something in the Sefarim Shiliach, which is called the New Testament by Christians. It's found in 1 Yochanan and 1 John chapter 3, verse 4. Here's my translation. Everyone who commits sin is also in rebellion of the Torah. Yours will say law, but what is the law? It's the Torah. Because sin is Torah rebellion. Yeah, 1 John chapter 3, verse 4. Sin is Torah rebellion. So if the Torah tells us to do something like, I don't know, forgive our brothers and sisters, wear fringe, pay tithe, etc., and we don't, we curse God in our hearts because we commit sin. On the other hand, if the Torah tells us not to do something like work on the Sabbath, have three-dimensional images of things that fly, crawl, slither, or swim in our kids' toy boxes, and we have these little trinkets in and or around our homes, we curse God in our hearts because we commit to our rebellion. Those who say, we live by grace, not the law, or the law passed away, was replaced by grace, they curse God because they don't live by the Torah. Let's go back to the things that Job lost. First, the Sheva, the Sabians, as they say in English, took the oxen and donkeys and killed all but one of the servants who took care of them. One of the servants who took care of the donkeys. Second, fire fell from heaven and consumed all his sheep and all but one of the servants who took care of them. Third, the Hasdim, the Chaldeans, took all the camels and killed all but one of the servants who took care of them. Fourth, a wind from the wilderness struck the four corners of his oldest son's house and killed all 10 of his children, leaving only one of their servants alive to tell about it. And Job 1:20 says, Then Job arose and tore his coat and shaved his head and fell down on the ground and worshipped. I can imagine being in anguish. I can imagine being in shock. I can even imagine being mad at God. But I can't imagine feeling like worshiping God at a time like this. What was going on in Job's mind? Let's talk about that which Job did lose, what he didn't lose. He didn't lose his great household, the furnishings, and his servants, the other servants. He didn't lose the other children's homes. He only lost one of the children's homes because, mind you, all of this stuff was part of his estate. So it was all still his. He only lost one house. Remember, he had 7 sons, 3 daughters. 7, 8, 9, 10. He's got 9 of their houses left, right? And his own house is still there. The housing that he provides for his servants, because in Jewish law, that's what they did. They built houses for their servants. He still owned all of those. Those servants still worked for him. All of that land and all of those crops and it was all still there. He didn't lose his children's land. He didn't lose any of the crops that his children had. He didn't lose any of his money. Job wasn't poor. He wasn't destitute. He wasn't in financial ruin. This story has never been about the loss of someone's wealth. Never. Let's go back to our scripture. It is at this point that Job turns his attention to his children. The next word is Yahveh. That's the proper name of God. And maybe I should say something here. If somebody's listening for the first time and hasn't heard me actually say God's name before, they're flipping out and freaking out. If you're still listening, listen. Nobody knows how to pronounce God's name. There are people, all these sacred names, people are running around. Some of them say you have to pronounce his name or you go to hell, and others say you can't pronounce his name or you go to hell. You get them all, every extreme and everything in between. But the truth is, back in the 1200s CE or AD, they took the name Yahveh, they took the vowel pointing out of it and put the vowel pointing from Adonai in it. You say, hey, I've seen the vowel pointing in Adonai. It doesn't look like the vowel pointing in. Well, there are grammar rules. So if you take the vowel pointing out of Adonai and you put it into Yahveh, there are a couple of changes that have to take place or you're breaking the grammar rules. So it's not, they don't look exactly the same. That's why. But they did that because in the 1200s CE or AD, the Jews suddenly, out of nowhere, developed this problem with people saying God's name. Up until that point, nobody had a problem. Foreign kings and foreign slaves knew God's name and spoke it out loud. They did not have any problem with saying God's name. It's not until the 1200s, in the Dark Ages, that this becomes a problem. It's not biblical. There is no reason why somebody shouldn't say God's name out loud. No reason. But the truth is, because the Yehudim stripped God's name from the book, which is the most unbelievable, there is no way to take God's name in vain that will outshine this one. This is the grandiose. There's no greater way to take God's name in vain than to take it out of his book. His name was in there almost 8,000 times, and they took it out. And not only did they take it out, they made it such that nobody will ever again know how to truly pronounce his name. Yahveh is probably the closest. It may even be right, but nobody knows that for sure. Yahweh, nope, that's 1800s. That's German influence. Their W made the V sound. So when they put the W in, they were saying Yahveh. It's when the English people get a hold of it that it becomes Yahweh. The Jehovah comes from them messing with the vowel pointings. Yahweh became Yehovah, which eventually morphed to Jehovah. Anyway, God's name is Yahweh. It's as close as we can get, and it's stupid to think, I mean stupid, to think that you can't say his name. I'm just putting it out there. It's stupid. It comes from ignorance. It comes from superstition. It comes from absolutely not knowing God's word at all. Anyway. Now, next word is Natan, which is gave. It's to give, to cause, to receive. You know, I've been given a lot of things. I was given a boatload of money once. Still haven't seen it, but somehow I was seeing it because it didn't cause me to receive it. To give to the hand, to give the hand to the victor, that's to surrender. To deliver into the power of someone, that's like you take a prisoner and you hand him, the local authorities hand him over to the federal authorities, that's what they're talking about. To give back, that's not giving it forward. To give or yield or bear fruit, so if you have a tree and it has fruit on it, it gave fruit. To have compassion for anyone ascribes glory or strength to anyone. That's you're giving them that. I give, you're correct. I give you that, but there's always a big but. Anyway, you get the idea what give is. It's followed by Va Yahveh. There's God's name again. La Kach. I love this word because it's to take, it's to stick together, to adhere. It's like glue. To adhere something to something, it's glue. It's super glue. To take for oneself, especially to take a wife. Are you starting to see the image behind this word? It's to take someone to the chest. Put the arms around them and pull them and adhere to them. In 1 Samuel 25:43, it said he took a wife for his son. So he paid the bride's price and brought this wife, and the son took the wife to his chest. He married her. So to take one to the chest is thought of as what happens when you marry someone. And then in Genesis 5:24, it says, for God had taken him away. Lakach had taken him away, i.e., taken him away and received him to heaven. God took him to his chest. All right. Our next word is Yehi, and it's literally he be. It's to be, it became, it is, it was. Then it says Shem. This is where we really need to think about this. Shem. That's usually translated as the word name. Hashem, the name. They don't call God by his name. They call him the name. Yeah, could you imagine calling your wife the name? I don't think you'd stay married very long. They say in the Jacinius, it's a celebrated name. It's to be famous. You've made a name for yourself. That's the way we talk about people who are famous. They used it that way in Hebrew. Some, not a lot, but they did. To make for oneself a name, to acquire fame, that kind of thing. It's used of somebody who's passed on, and they're remembered. It's a memory. Because that name is being remembered. It's like we make a memorial, make a stone, and write, this is so and so. This is, here lies so and so. He was a great husband, father, and warrior, whatever. They use it in that way. They say for his name's sake about God, and that's whatever you would expect from God. That's his name's sake. That's what they mean by that. Now listen, I found this note. I don't remember where. I think I actually found it in the Strong's Concordance. And I hate, if anyone knows me, they know I hate the Strong's Concordance. I use the numbering system because it's not perfect, but it's pretty good, and it's useful in helping people find things when they don't speak the language. Beyond using the numbers, I don't use the Strong's for anything. I don't recommend anybody use the Strong's for anything. When the work first came out, it was a good reference guide to people who were fluent in Hebrew and fluent in Greek. Now, it's never been good for somebody who doesn't speak Greek or Hebrew. It was a quick reference guide. It's what it said in the book when it first came out in the 1800s, that it was made for scholars. It was not made for the average person with no skills. Over the years, they kept yanking all the stuff out that helped the scholar do something, look at something quickly as a reference. They took all of that stuff out, and then people who didn't know anything about the language, knew nothing about the customs, the culture, the history, began to just pick and choose whatever felt good to them. And that's what they're doing to this day. It's just gotten worse and worse and worse, taking people further and further and further away from a good understanding of the Bible. But in this book that I don't like very much, it said, and I think this is the book, I could be wrong, but I think it's the Strong's. It said, by a usage chiefly Hebraistic. Basically, the Jews are the ones that do this. The name is used for everything which the name covers, everything the thought or feeling of which is roused in the mind by mentioning, hearing, remembering. So everything about God, right? If you're talking about God's name, it should bring up the feelings and the emotions, everything that when you think of God, it should bring all of this up. It should bring up good things, by the way, not bad things. But here's the thing, and we have a smidgen of this in the English language. A police officer will say, stop in the name of the law. Because the law is his authority to tell you to stop. If he says, stop in the name of Chuck, first off, it's a rule in my life, never trust a man named Chuck. But be that as it may, if he says stop in the name of Chuck, are you going to stop? You probably shouldn't. This guy's crazy. But anyway, if he says stop in the name of the law, you probably better do what you're told, right? Because this man is a police officer and has the right to tell you to stop because the law has given him this right. This is what this word is used for most of the time in the Bible. It's talking about God's authority. And God's authority, in case you don't know, is the Torah. It's his law. Stop in the name of the law, that's where it comes from. Stop in the name of God's Torah, right? God's authority is his Torah. His authority over us is the Torah. If we live according to the Torah, God has authority over us. If we don't live according to the Torah, we'll still be punished by it, but God has no authority over us. We can see it in our own law. If we live according to the laws of our land, then the laws of our land have authority over us. We give them that authority. But if we start breaking those laws, we have separated ourselves from that authority, but what we are still under is the punishment that comes with breaking that law that's over us, whether we like it or not, whether we recognize it or not, whether we believe in it or not, makes no difference. Because the law of the land has authority over us, just like the law of God does. The next word in our verse is Yahveh. It says God's proper name again. Then it says Mevorach. Mevorach. It's from Barak. If you take the meh off of it, what you're left with is Barak. You've heard it, right? It's blessed. It's to bend the knee, to kneel down. The primary notion lies in the breaking down, because it's the picture behind it is a camel coming to its knees, and the camel master, I don't know what you call him, the guy who's, who owns the camel or who's lord over the camel, then he takes the stuff off, he takes the burden from the camel, right? And then he puts the burden on, he takes the burden off. That's his call. It's not the camel's call. And, and it would be a little dumb to put camel food on the camel, wouldn't it? Because the camel's just going to walk in a circle trying to get the food off his back, right? So the food's, whatever the burden is, it's not for the camel, it's for someone else. We need to get that in our minds. But the image of blessing God is for, if you can't get a camel to lie down, there should be a command, down. Like I say to my dog, down, and he goes down on all four. He goes down flat on his belly, I should say. And so that may be the same thing that they say to a camel, down. But if the camel doesn't go down, what they do is they take a fairly long but skinny stick. They go over there and pop the thing on the back of the knee. They're not trying to knock a ball out of the ballpark. They're not trying to harm this animal in any way. But if you tap a camel in the back of the knee, and I'm talking light tap, you could do it with your finger, but if you do that, the camel's not obeying you. That means he's agitated. And if you get up close enough to where you can do it with your hand, he's going to bite you. So you take a stick, get some distance between you. That's why they use the stick. They hit him on the back of the knee. They just tap the back of him, and down the thing goes. So the idea of God blessing us comes not when we have lots of wealth and lots of things, because the things aren't for us, right? Are you getting it? It comes when God bends us at the knee and either puts the burden on that we're to carry, or he takes the burden off because we've arrived at our destination. But when they're down on their belly, that's when the master feeds the camel food, gives the camel drink, and even touches the camel. Quite a sight to see one rub the ears of a camel the way you would think of rubbing the ears of your dog. Yeah, they do that. The camels really respond. It's hysterical. You should see it sometime. But this is the idea of a blessing. Very different than the Western idea, because for us, all of that stuff was piled on us so that we could consume it. Okay, so here's my translation of Job 1:20. And with these words, he brought things to light. Remember that, Amar? Naked I came out of my mother's womb, and naked will I return to the womb of the earth. Yahweh's compassion caused me to receive my children. He's talking about his children. They caused me to receive my children. And now Yahweh has taken, he has placed before his eyes and received my children into his possession, sticking to and adhering to them and adhering them to his chest like glue. He has taken my children for his bride. The blood, being covered by the blood, is a powerful thing. And Job knew this. Now I want to bring up a verse from the Sepharim Shiliach, which, as I said earlier, is called the New Testament by Christians. In his letter to the synagogue at Rome, and yes, it was a synagogue, there was no such thing as a church back then, to a synagogue at Rome, in chapter 11, verse 29, Rabbi Shaul ben Gamliel wrote, Rabbi Shaul ben Gamliel, Saul, Paul, the son of Gamliel. This is what he wrote. For the gifts and callings of God are without repentance. This is, of course, a bad English translation, so I'll have to take you through each Greek word, which I will take back to the Hebrew equivalent so that you will have a clear understanding of what this second temple rabbi meant by his words. Our first Greek word is ameta meleta, which is without repentance. It would have been the Hebrew word yinachem, which is in Nephal, which doesn't really mean anything to people in English, but that's basically to draw the breath forcibly, to pant. It's without repentance. And the idea of forcibly and to pant, it's from the nostrils going in and out from hard breathing. So to draw the breath forcibly is from anger. To grow or to lament, if you've ever seen somebody really groaning and crying from the very depths of their soul, it looks very much the same, right? Because it's the breathing in and out, the hard breathing. It's caused by things that you've done yourself or something that's done to you. They use it for people who take vengeance because they do that in anger. They use it for people who give comfort because they help somebody, they hug somebody when they're crying and stuff like that. So it's used to people like that. It sometimes includes the notion of help put forth, especially when used to God, of course. It's to be comforted, because the hard breathing, can be from a good thing, your tears of joy, if you will, but mostly from pity and from anger. Those are the two main things. It's from an unused root. Remember, I talked about that earlier. It's a root. This word was never used in the biblical text, but it's built off of this word naham, which is to draw the breath forcibly, to pant, to groan. Okay, our next word in Greek is gar, which is key in Hebrew. It just means for or because. Then that's followed in Hebrew by ta, which is the definite article. You would say ha in Hebrew, which it's just it's the definite article. Then we have harismata, which is gifts. Harismata is gifts. And in Hebrew, that would be matanah. It's a gift, a present, especially use of bribes even, a gift offered to God. And that's tongue-in-cheek calling a bribe a gift. But anyway, it's from the root natan, and we've already had that. That's the word to give, to cause to receive. Then it's kai, which is veh in Hebrew. It's just the conjunction and. It's just a single letter, but it makes the sound A, like EI, like Sinai. It ends in EI, or is it AI? AI. They, They. There you go. That's where you get the A sound. Anyway, it's again the definite article. The next Greek word is klesis, the callings. It's calling in plural, klesis, calling. That connects to the Hebrew word kara, to cry out, to call, used of beast crying. It's wolves howling and stuff like that, or a pack of wild dogs and wolves and stuff. They make all this noise when they're going out hunting. It's used of an outcry. It's used of weeping. It's used absolutely of any kind of cry, even where they're not articulate. It's like groaning, in other words. In Genesis 39:14, it says, I cried with a loud voice, kara, because it's passion. In the biblical text, if they said kara, it was to say something loud and with feeling. And now in modern Hebrew, that's to sing a love song. Because you still have that connection to singing something with feeling, saying something with feeling. Anyway, I don't know what else I'd want to say about that. Tau is our next word. That means of, and this is theou. Theou. Elohim, God. From the root Allah. Allah. Yeah, it's from the root Allah, which is an unused root. The biblical texts never use God in the root, so they never said Allah in the Bible. But it's to worship a deity, to adore, to be stunned, to be smitten with reverence. Now, this is not the same as the Allah that, who are these guys? Islam follows. That's from the word fat butt. Because back in the day, back in that, when they first came up with that name, and yeah, they came up with the name, it didn't exist until the 600s AD, right? That's a brand new religion that started then. 600 years after Yeshua, then they came up with the idea for Allah. But that comes from the word that means fat butt, because back in that time, that meant royalty. The only person on earth, the only people on earth that were fat were royalty, people who were wealthy. And so it was like the ultimate compliment to tell somebody they had a fat butt. But, they don't want to connect it to that now, because Western world has come in and really changed things around. But this is Allah. It's to worship, to be stunned with and smitten with reverence. It's to be round, to be thick or fat of the belly. So they have that same idea with this word. In the Gesenius, it says, see the word El. Now, El Shaddai, blah, 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 right? El is strong, mighty, a mighty one, a hero. It's used for the word God a lot, but it doesn't really mean God. It means a mighty hero, something like that. But, of course, since God is the ultimate mighty hero, they use that. Then it's Elohah. He said, look at that word too, Elohah, and that's God's, it's majesties. It's, of course, this word in plural. It's used of the one true God, of course, and it's used of every other kind of false god and idol there is. So it's just a generic word. So Elohim, of course, is just a generic word. You don't have to capitalize it. You don't have to put a minus sign in it. It's just a generic word. It is not God's name. So here's my translation of Romans 11:29. For the gifts that teach you wisdom, where did I get that? I don't even remember seeing that. I must have passed it over. But the gifts that teach you wisdom, that put place and set a foundation, which you are caused to receive by God's compassion and the crying out with a loud voice, that's the kara, loud, passionate, weeping and joy, calling you to himself. He will never, 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 never lament. He will never grieve. He will never draw his breath forcibly from the anger, from the hard breathing that's draws breath forcibly from the hard breathing and panting with groans of regret. He'll never do it. He will never regret the day he called you by name. He will never regret the day he began to teach you. He will never regret feeling desire for you. Does God take things away that he has given you? No. But he does carry those who are covered by the blood sacrificed to his chest. So why did this happen? Well, it wasn't about Job. It wasn't about a perfect man being randomly picked for unimaginable destruction. It wasn't for Job. Job was perfect. He had already been through the fire. That's what they mean by that. It was to let generation after generation after generation know not to blame God when the storms of life come. And they will come. Why? The answer is found in Job 38:1, which says, then Yahveh answered Job out of Hasarah, out of the whirlwind. What does that mean? It means that God is in the midst of every storm with those who live according to the Torah, like Job. When things go wrong in our lives, we need to fall on our knees and bless the authority of Yahveh, because he has the authority to give us our children, and he has the authority to take them back. to his chest to take them for his bride. He has that authority. We are not in the storm alone. That's what they're saying here. We're not in the storm alone. God is right here in the great big middle of our personal hurricane. He will not allow the enemy to dish out more than we can bear. But, and this is a really big but, there is a huge difference between the storms brought on by our disobedience and the storms brought on by an enemy who hates those of us who live according to the Torah. A huge difference. Those who live in sin live with relentless punishments, while those who live according to the Torah are at times relentlessly attacked. Let me say that again. Those who live in sin, Torah rebellion, live with relentless punishments, while those who live according to the Torah are at times relentlessly attacked. Let me say it one more time. Those who live in sin live with relentless punishments, while those who live according to the Torah are at times relentlessly attacked. Make sure you know the difference. Otherwise, you'll blame the enemy for an attack you brought on yourself. Those who are blind to self-inflicted wounds are destined to remain in a nightmarish cycle of punishing attacks. This is not to be confused with a long-winded attack from the resistance. Those who live in sin can cry out till the cows come home, but they will not be heard unless and until they are obedient to the Torah. They also need to know that starting a walk according to the Torah does not get them out of their punishment. God is not mocked. What we sow, we will reap. However, if they stay on that path, these people who started, finally get on the path of Torah, things will eventually turn around. It just takes more time to see that turnaround with some. Get on the path. It is better to fall on our knees and worship God knowing that we are in right standing than to fall on our knees under the weight of our punishment. What I am saying is this: with or without God, life is going to throw everything it has at us. With God, there is hope because there is help. Without God, there is no hope. Please don't give up in the midst of the storm. You have never been closer to God than you are in those times. Think about it. That's when he bends you at the knee. He was in the midst of the storm with Job. That's not the right time to give up. Job was a perfect man, but God was not obligated to get him, get him out of this situation. He was perfect. Job was perfect, but God was not obligated to save his children from death. Job was perfect, but God wasn't obligated to save his sheep, to save his camels, to save his donkeys. God was not obligated to save his servants. Job was perfect, yet God was not obligated to do any of those things. There's nothing that we will ever do that will make God beholden to us. He will never owe us anything. But we have to realize that if we live according to the Torah, we're going to be attacked. And sometimes it will be relentless. It will be long-winded and hard. Just make sure that you're not under punishment calling it an attack. You can't live half of your life Torah observant and half of it sin and expect that things are going to work out well. All you're doing is opening up the Pandora's box. You're opening up the punishment and the sin, punishment and the attack all at once. You need to go through punishment or attack. Going through punishment and attack is a bad place to be. We have got to find a way. Regardless of what we have to do, regardless of what it costs us, we have got to find a way to live according to God's law. And in those times, for those of us who live according to God's law, God is in the midst of those storms. And those are the times we have to turn into God. We have to get on our knees and pray harder than ever before. That is not the time to give up. Because, like I said, you are never in your life going to be closer to God than in a storm, because He's in the midst of it. And He's there because of you. Shalom, shalom.